I'm here today to talk about Geometrid. First off, thank you for giving us the opportunity. A little bit, as I get into this very quickly, a little bit about myself. Besides being a non-executive director at Geometrid, I'm also the Asia Pacific Director of PropTech for JLL. Many of you, if you're paying attention to the property industry, you know who we are. We're the second largest property firm in the world. And in Asia Pacific, we have about 42,000 staff and manage about 5,000 properties with about 1.5 billion square feet under management. So the reason I'm telling you all this is not because you need to know about JLL, but just so you understand what I'm about to share with you is very much informed by the fact that I think I've seen pretty much everything there is to see within the world of PropTech. And what I want to share is not so much the trends of PropTech, because a lot of people will talk about the trends that sort of fit their narrative, but some of the don'ts, the mistakes I see a lot of PropTechs making because they're designing systems that they don't quite understand the separation between the users who actually interface with the system and where it would get commercialized within our industry. So very quickly, I'm just going to talk you through don't number one is don't estimate the power of people. So the job of technology is not to replace people. It is to replace the tedious aspects of the work that people do. And that actually leads us to the second mistake I see a lot of PropTechs making. They're adding digital layers to existing processes. So technology is not meant to add another layer. And usually how this layer takes shape is by data entry, right? We log it on a sheet of paper that gets handed off to someone else who then puts it into a database system. Assuming all of that is keyed in correctly, then we have data to analyze. And then on top of that, this third mistake that we often see made is that ends up creating new complexities, right? So that is all of a sudden we've added new layers, different touching of hands, all of these different things. They basically don't remove the tedium. They add new kinds of tedium in the hope of having data that can be properly analyzed later. So the reason that I ended up first investing in Geometrid and coming on as a non-executive director is because I think what Geometrid does is special in the sense that it doesn't make those mistakes. In fact, one of the things I really liked about the product from the first time I saw it was how it addresses those big mistakes in really clever and I think elegant ways. The first thing it does is it simplifies the data capture. So rather than using a native app that either works in iOS or works in Android, it just uses the camera in any phone and then runs a web app to actually connect building progress and where the materials are in the cycle, in the supply chain of a built asset to a BIM model. So just by performing the action and scanning it, almost like a parcel, we're able to update the entire status of a building project. The second thing it does, it integrates the digital layer. So rather than having somebody keying something in separately in that handoff of information I talked about before, and the result you see is what's flashing on screen here are these hand highlighted diagrams. Because the process is integrated using QR codes and any type of device that is connected to the internet, that automated model also means that drawings and status updates are all done in an automated way as well. So there's none of those extra touch points I talked about before. And then the last thing it does is amplifies the power of the workforce. So construction workers are going to be around for a long time. I know we're hearing a lot about robotics and things like that, but they need to be there. What we don't need to do is give them paperwork and extra things to do. They're already working out in horrible conditions, right? It's either too hot, it's too cold, whatever it might be. A simple scan of the phone allows that data to be processed, and it verifies at the person who's doing the work, not the people who are managing it, that it's being done. So then all of your progress ends up in a single interactive model, and you can see exactly where you're at. You can see it from anywhere, and you can give different parties that need to know the access to that. This addresses a huge problem in the industry that 96% of all data in this industry goes unused and most of it is unstructured. So with the little bit of time I have left, having kind of explained to you how it does all the right things, what's next for Geometrid? Well, when we look at how this data could be applied for bigger problems that are solved, not just the status updates of how a construction project is going. Being able to capture this data in such a frictionless way will allow us to look at different ESG issues and make sure that not only are things compliant, but that we can start to create an evaluation framework for ESG financial products in the space. And so when we tether that with the German Supply Chain Act, right, and all of the information that's making public, we're actually able to really generate meaningful data and then prove it because we've looked at all the touch points that are there. And that brings me to the very last point. You cannot improve what you cannot measure. And Geometrid helps us be able to measure that at every aspect of the building supply chain. And that's Geometrid, and myself and Milos are available to answer any questions you have about Geometrid. Thank you.
Many thanks for your pitch and for the interesting presentation, Jordan. Any questions from the audience? Feel free to raise your hand or unmute yourself.
I have one here, Hugo from TechQuartier's. Thanks for the presentation. One quick one is, where are you basically with the commercialization and go to market? Is the solution ready at the moment?
Yeah, so several projects have already taken place. I want to say a dozen projects have taken place, including a few marquee projects. Like the most famous would be the Jewel at Changi Airport, which is a giant indoor waterfall you've probably seen all over Instagram. All the glass cladding that went on that went through Geometrid. So they were able to track that real time as literally the building was being assembled. Commercialization right now, Hugo, really exists mostly with main contractors who are managing the overall build project. However, we're starting to see considerable interest from property developers who want that extra layer of assurance between the main contractors and themselves when it's being built, not just taking the contractor's word for it that everything's being done, but being able to check themselves to see, yeah, we're good. And you know, this, you can't falsify this information. Thank you for the question.
Yeah, no, thanks. Had a quick follow-up on that if there's no other. I don't want to monopolize the floor, but what's your presence currently in the German market? You mentioned also the Supply Chain Act. Is that acting for you guys as a tailwind, and is it creating opportunities in any ways?
Well, so I think what it does is it opens up part of the market visibility that we wanted to have anyway. By having that codified into regulation and having now data sources that are mostly open source, right? They have to be public data sources. It's going to allow what we were already tracking to get more granular and address things. You know, you saw on the slide there, things like whether or not something has been subject to potential child labor, right? All of these different things that we can now evaluate because these are publicly available data sources. That's great. And much like I think like some of the privacy laws that have come out of the EU, if you do it right and you don't treat it as an encumbrance, you build on top of it, you're really going to be able to do great things by capturing this data in the fluid nature of the process itself.
Any follow-up questions on that or additional questions in Jordan's direction?
Well, feel free to reach out to us on LinkedIn. You can connect with me directly, also connect with Milos and the Geometrid team, and we're happy to answer any more questions that you have. Thanks for the time.